All right, this is part 2 of the SynthDef practice tutorial, synth and SynthDefs and synths. So now we're going to get to the synth part. The last one, we talked about maybe making about 5 different SynthDefs using a template and just changing the UGen there. So I've made 5, made a Siny, a Blippy, a Toothy, a Cubey, and a Formy, okay, using different UGens each way. Now I'm going to talk you through maybe using code to actually make sounds now. So let me recompile actually and reboot. So we start clean. And I'm going to boot my server and send all my SynthDefs all in one. So I put this open bracket there and then the close bracket there. So I can send all of my SynthDefs at once. So I'll go ahead and send them all. And it reports at a SynthDef. So that probably means no errors. Okay, now, so let's get started here. So I'm going to use this nomenclature here, tilde, to create a global variable, an S1, S2, etc. So the first one I think I used was I created a sine wave one. So synth, okay. And then, so this is how we use a synth. I mean, we've been over this before, but I'll go over it again. To use a synth, you're creating an instance of the synth. So the SynthDef really doesn't make any sound. But when you create a synth, an instance of that synth, it's just like a blueprint or template, the SynthDef. When you create an actual synth based on that template, then that's an actual sound-making thing. And this is where the arguments come into play. So if I do Siny, I think if you recall, when we set that up, it says down here that we've actually created a synth, but no sound is coming out. Mainly because, mainly because we have that gate off. Remember that gate argument? So we can just set it, go s1.set, and then we can set, so now when we do this s1 equals synth, this variable s1 has become the placeholder for the synth. So we don't have to worry about the synth part anymore. We just do everything to s1. So when we're doing s1.set, that's when we are trying to, that's when we can change the arguments. So any arguments listed here in the arg section, now we can use a set command to set them. So let's set the freak, okay, and then I'm going to set it to middle C. So I have this little trick that I use, a little converter that will convert, because I don't know what middle C is in terms of hertz, in terms of cycles per second frequency. And that's what my UGen is expecting. So I'm going to use this .MIDI CPS. So I'm going to go, I happen to know middle C is the MIDI note 60, .MIDI, M-I-D-I-C-P-S. And that will convert. So if I just evaluate that, if I highlight just that and evaluate it, you'll see that it converts it to 261 hertz or cycles per second. All right, so that's handy. So if I change that to that, then that'll play middle C. And then I need to actually engage the envelope. So I need to set my T_trig gate, to 1, okay? And that will set that to go. Okay, so that's a middle C type of thing. Now, if you'll recall, you can also instantiate or create an instance of a synth with arguments changed. So the first showing of it will have all these arguments changed. So that's what I would suggest we do here. That's what I've done here. And the way you do that is when you start it, S1 equals synth. So let's free S1 now. So now S1 doesn't exist anymore once I free it. Okay. Now this is a bit tricky, so I'm going to go over it a couple times, and I might not be explaining it the best way, but I'll try my best. So you have your SynthDef, and that's like a blueprint. Once you create a synth, you're creating one instance based on that SynthDef. Now you can create, depending on your CPU power, hundreds of them if you want. So I can have S1 through S99 or S101, and they all could be this based on the Siny synth. And, one way you can do it is by changing the arguments for each one. Okay, so if I want to create an instantiation, I with some arguments changed, I just use these square brackets, this array notation. Okay, and then all the arguments go in there. So the name, and then you see the second argument is args, comma, and the only exception here is that we don't just put them in naked list. We have to put them in these square brackets. So if I want to make the freak 60 dot MIDI, okay, so the middle C. Okay, and what else things I want to change? Well, sometimes it might be a good idea to remind you yourself what arguments are available in the SynthDef that you wrote. Okay, so if I go up to Signy and just copy all the args, I'm going to copy all the arguments and paste them down here just to watch, and then I'll erase them later. I notice that I have a frequency argument. Well, I changed that. And then I have an amplitude, and then I have attack, sustain, release, curve. A lot to do with the envelope. Okay, so I think I'm going to make this kind of a longish tone, maybe 4 seconds long. All right, and I want a kind of gentle attack, not a really abrupt attack, but not really gentle. I mean, not taking forever. So I'm going to change the attack, ATK, to, so what we'll do is here, instead of setting the frequency when we set, we could do it either place. We'll instantiate it, and then we'll just use this to turn it on and off. Okay, this set 1 gate to 1. Okay, so I'm going to make my attack, getting back to attack, I'm going to make my attack maybe 0.2. 200 milliseconds, or 1/5 of a second, so it'll be slightly gentle. It won't be an abrupt attack. And then I'm looking at my possibilities to sustain. I want it to be about 4 seconds, so we can just make our sustain 4 seconds. Now, if I had a really long attack, it all gets added up, right? So I might want to take that out of the sustain, but we'll just keep that 4 seconds. And then a release, a slightly gentle release, maybe in the same vein. Maybe we'll make it slightly longer, so 0.3. So release, REL 0.3. Don't forget that leading 0. Okay, and then curve. And remember, you can always plot these if you want to see how they look. So I can do env. If you remember, it's the linen, LINEN envelope. Then I'm going to do a 0.2 attack, sustain a 4, or release a 0.3. And then I'm going to mess around the curve because I always forget what curve. So we'll try a -4 for now, and let's see what that looks like. Oh, and then dot plot. Okay, if I do that, right. So actually, I want the other shape. I think I want it to go up and then increase and go like that. So I think I want a positive curve, maybe a +4. Yeah, so I want it to get louder quicker, right? And to get softer quicker, slightly quicker. Okay, well, we'll stick with that. I'll just leave that there for now, just in case I want to plot some other envelopes, and we can change it. So what did I say? Curve of 4. So we're going to have a curve, CRV of 4. Okay, so if I go ahead and instantiate it this way, okay, and then I listen to it. Okay, let me just free it. Oh no, it ended on its own. 4 seconds. Okay, I find the attack slightly too abrupt, so I'm going to free it. Maybe take the curve down to like a 3, and the attack slightly longer to maybe a 0.4. Okay, so again, remember, you are starting a brand new synth every time you do it this way. All right. So, and then you're setting that synth after it's been started. Okay. So if I didn't free it, there would be another one running in the background that I unfortunately wouldn't have access to because I just renamed S1. So you can replace global variables. S1 could be a synth right now. So if I highlight that, it says it's a synth. But if I say S1 equals 3, now if I evaluate S1, it's going to be 3. It's not the synth anymore. So I guess what I was trying to say before is if I go ahead and evaluate that, and then I set the gate to 1, And before I free it, I evaluate again. Now there's two S1s, but one is kind of been hidden now. I don't have access to it. So I have to stop everything now. So I'm going to command period to stop everything. Hope that was a bit clear. In other words, I guess what I'm doing is here I'm trying to set up a patch that we'll just need to execute once, and then we can, set it to go later. We can turn it on and off basically. So this is kind of like the patch. So that's why we're doing this. But if you want to use set, you can. You can just another way to do this would be to let the synth go, and then to use set to change all the arguments. But I'm going to do it this way because, then it's just permanently there as I have down here. I can just send them all to go once, then they're running whenever I want them to use them. Now it's just a matter of finding the right parameters. So everything's free. I think I have to resend my SynthDefs. Now I'm going to send that going, and then I'm going to turn it on. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, now my S2, so that's just a sine wave there. My S2, I'm going to make another one. So I'm just going to copy that actually. Essentially the same, except I'm going to make it not 61. I'm going to make it, what do I have it at? 79. I guess 1 octave or 2 octaves. An octave and a fifth, I guess. Is that right? 79. Okay, so 79. So I'm going to change the pitch to 79, which is an octave and a fifth, I believe. Is that right? 60, 72 is the octave. 73, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 79. Yes, that's the G. That's a G an octave away from the middle C. All right? And I'm going to have them play at the same time. Don't forget to rename here. That's really important. Again, if you do both S1, you're just going to erase S1, and the other one won't play. The original S1 won't play, okay? Because if this is evaluated afterwards, it'll just erase that one. All right? And in this case, I'm just going to have it sort of ramp up and then ramp down. So I'm going to have the 0 sustain, but I'm going to have it last about the same amount, 4 seconds. We can make it maybe 5. So attack is going to be really long, 2.5. And the release will be, say, 2.5. Okay. And then a curve, we'll make the curve a little bit more extreme, something like that, 6. Okay. So if I evaluate S2, then I need another one that says S2.set gate 1. Okay, that's how I turn S2 on. Okay, oops. Make sure we change the name as well. So now I have that one, and I have this one as well. Okay, and if I play them both together, it's kind of nice. Okay, so you see how I created sort of a sound by creating these synths, and then I'm going to put brackets around that because I do want to play them together. All right, so I've created these synths, and I just went through the arguments. I'll do one more, and then I'll just sort of show you the various arguments I've done. So one of them is I have this sort of like I'm just going to copy this up so I can see it, and then I'll go through it with you. I have this sort of chord that I do using a square wave. I call them QB. Okay, so I developed this SynthDef called QB, and same thing. I'm gonna create a new synth S. Well, there it's S5, so we'll call it S5, and I'm gonna say synth, and then I'm gonna have the SynthDef it's based on, so CUBEY, and then remember this bracket notation, square bracket notation for all the arguments. So I can start a new one with all the arguments in place. And there, I changed the frequency, again, using that MIDI CPS trick to 36, which I think is 2 octaves below middle C. It's a C. Okay, and then I changed various things that are pertinent to that SynthDef. The width of the pulse width of the square wave, a short attack, a very, very long sustain, because it's kind of a drone chord, a release, and a curve. All right. So if I do that, if I just evaluate that, and then again another set, so it's running, but I have to do S5.set, and then the T underscore gate to 1. Okay, and that it starts a kind of drone thing there. Okay. Okay, so you see, well, you know, in this case, you can play around. For example, let me just copy this. I didn't take you through the whole process, but so for example, I might want to try various things like, and let's do s5.free, so we don't have a bunch of these things running. Okay, so I'm gonna try, say, a really low width, see what that sounds like. Sounds a little bit fatter, I guess is what you call it, you know. Try medium width. That's interesting. Okay, and I went with this really big width. It gives kind of a, what's that? Clavinet kind of sound or something like that. Reedy, a little bit reedy or something. All right, so yeah, so what I would do is just go ahead and follow that. You know, these three things, just play around with some of the parameters until you get some sounds that you like. And then you can set them to go either in combination or alone. All right, so I'll give you an example of that. I've set all these arguments up, all my different synths, and I've given them different names, and I've set up sort of the basic parameters. Here I did sort of cheat here. I changed some of the parameters. I guess I was playing with set, but we'll just leave it like that for now. Okay, so I have a couple sets of things that I like. I have a set here and a set where I change the pitch a little bit. I have these two where I'm doing some kind of, again, some kind of tones. I have some short ones here. Okay, and then I have a chord here. All right, so just to give you an example. So let me recompile. Let me boot. Also, a little trick here too is you can, this used to be built into the old IDE or the old interface of SuperCladder, but you can have there's a little GUI that controls the server, like has buttons and stuff, and it doesn't come up automatically anymore, but if you simply use the command s.make GUI, GUI with a capital G, it'll bring up this little thing. And the nice thing about this, well, you have a volume control, but also you have a little record button too. So I can record my little thing. So let's recompile again. Oops. And that'll get rid of that GUI anyways. And let me do s.make GUI. Let me boot it. I can boot it with that button if I want. Okay. And then I'll send my thing. So the first thing I should send is all my SynthDefs. And the next thing I should send is all my little synth definitions. So these are starting the synths, but quietly because the gate is set to 0. So they're not sounding until I do set T gate 1. So I'm sending all these, but you'll notice a bunch of things will happen. And then I get my gate back here. Okay, my GUI back here. All right. And then what I'll do is I have these also set things, you know, set gate 1. Yours probably will all look just like this, T gate 1, because hopefully you've incorporated all of your parameters in there, okay, into the thing. I made some changes later on, so, but that's fine. I'm going to make a recording. Now, it sends it to, I think it tells me, yeah, see, it sends it to this file. So it's recording now. And I will start my piece. So I made this little chord using these C5, S5, A6, and A7, which happen to be just a set of cube synths, or I call them QB, square waves. Okay, so a little square wave chord. Okay. And then I have little tones that I can send. So these are sine. Or no, I think that's like a blip. I have little short. And my sine wave. So there, sorry to interrupt a nice piece there, but I find it a little bit abrupt, so I'm going to make a change on the fly. I'm going to make the release a little bit slower there. So I don't know what it is at this point, but oops. Let's make the release, say, 1.5. Okay, and we'll do the same here. Okay, let's start up our chord again. Oh, that was 4, I think, so maybe 5.5. That's nice. Okay, so let's continue on. All right, perfect timing. Okay, so we'll stop that recording. And if I go up on my post window, oh, it's gone really far now. But I have it in users, JDAing, Super Collider recordings, blah, 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 blah. Maybe if I go Super Collider. And then open that window there. And then I have that one. It's there. I can listen to it there. And there. Okay. So there you go. So you see, I mean, this is simply practice. You see that you can do, a fair bit of stuff there with 5 SynthDefs, which is a whole lot. Not that much to write, but a whole lot. I can do really a lot of things with that. You can imagine, if I took some time and created a bunch of different instances, this gives you a sense of like how you can use the same SynthDef and create different sounds, and how you can, set synths to go together to create sort of combination sounds. All right, so this is the sort of behind the scenes stuff that you can do. Obviously, if you hook this up to a MIDI keyboard or some kind of controller device or our mouse theremin, it makes it a little bit easier to use some of these things. But this is really just a practice to just understand that we have these things called SynthDefs, to learn to write them, and then the way to use them by either instantiating, setting a synth going with some arguments that you've explored, or setting a synth going and then changing them with the set on the fly with some arguments. Okay, and it also sort of points out this use of this gate. So to not put too much of a fine point on it, these synths are running, and then I either turn the envelope on or off, so to make it sound or not sound. Okay, there's different methods. There's ways of turning it on and just letting it sound and then killing itself. so that they're not running all the time. But with processors these days, just a few synths, it's not that big a deal now. If you were doing some really heavy processes, I might not have everything running. I might have a different method, but that's for another day. All right, so hopefully that'll give you some good practice. I would recommend, you now have your 5 SynthDefs, hopefully. I would recommend then playing with the arguments, going through each one and finding a few sounds you like, and then setting them up in this way and maybe creating a little composition that you can then record. All right, good luck with that.